It is a hot topic for us because making your application scalable is one of our top priorities. And we all know that expansion is a natural evolution for any businesses and the software application that runs as a backbone to your business. So when the size of your application grows, so as the resource consumption and requirements. Now, obviously, the preemptive multi-thread support in 4D is here to enable you to take full advantage of your multi-core machines, the machines that you spend a lot of money in and invested for your business. And by having more processes, memory, and users simply means that you are going to have a higher performance, workloads, and productivities. Now, based on some of your feedbacks given to us, many of you have already starting to use and take advantage of the preemptive programming in 4D, and that's really good news to us. We spend a lot of effort in making it available to you, and I think this is really create a big effort from our engineering department. So I'd really like to give them a big round of applause quickly. Now, just to recap, there are some of the things that we've done so far since version 16, and we gave you the preemptive process through the use of workers. You also have the preemptive web server, and this is really huge. I'm a big fan of web serving and web design in 4D. So this makes things a lot better in terms of implementation and operations. And finally, over 1,000 commands are now considered thread safe in version 17. That is a really big effort that we push to make it available to you. So one of the biggest challenge when we talk about preemptive process in 4D or any applications has to do with the fact that the process runs independently and they are isolated from others. Information cannot be passed or shared easily from one process to another without breaking the law of preemptive multi-thread architecture. And in the best practice, what you want to do is you want to share as little information as possible between the processes, mostly to avoid any kind of a contention. And when we talk about contention, we often resort back to the use of semaphores to help us out. But using semaphores sometimes can be difficult and tricky. If you don't do it correctly, you don't program it correctly, it could cause some serious problem or deadlocks. So we have to come up with something that provide you with an alternative way to deal with that type of usage, allowing you to pass information from one process to another without breaking any rule or law of the multi-thread programming. And I think we found it. A new way, easy and flexible way to share information among processes. And that's through the use of shared objects. And I think I'm just going to show you the demo because it's going to explain a lot of what I'm talking about better. So here I have a simple database. I'm going to show you the method that I'm going to execute in a minute. But as you can see, this method has a few lines of code. I'm going to start from the top, okay? I have a C object variable declared as a local variable. Now, this variable I'm going to pass into another or other two processes at line number 9 and number 10, but let's look down at line number 2. The variable is being initialized as new shared object. Now, this is a new command. Basically, it set a specific unique properties to this variable. If you look down, I'm going to go ahead and specify some properties to this object variable, 3 properties. And if you notice, I did it inside of the use block. Now, use and end use, these are two new keywords. You will call these keywords when you want to make modification to your shared object variable. And it's required. This, again, we'll come back to it, and you'll have a better idea of why you need to do this. Let me highlight that and just kind of show you where it is. Now, let's go down to line number 9 and number 10. And this is simply spawning two new processes that I'm going to pass my variable to. At the end, I'm passing my shared object variable. In the normal variable, if you have an object variable, not the shared object variable, when you do something like this, a copy of that object is actually being passed to your new process. In this case, because the variable itself has been initialized to be a shared object, its reference is what being passed into those two new processes. Let's go ahead and execute the methods. Okay, here I have two debuggers representing two processes. I'm going to go ahead and add my variables to the expression area. I'm going to do it for both debuggers. At the same time, I'm going to go ahead and expand the content from process 2 and then go back to process 1 just to show you that they are actually identical. And yes, because they are coming from the same source. Now, at the moment, none of these are making any kind of modification to the variable just yet. So what I want to do now is from process number 1, I'm going to go ahead and execute a few lines, start from use, that's telling 4D that I would like to make modification to my variable. And the next line, which is line number 6, is where I'm assigning my property, which is a text property. If I'm going to process number 2, you can see right away that the change I made from process number 1 reflect in process number 2 as well. At the same time, if you look where my cursor is, you see busy, right? 4D is telling you, or that process, that the object itself is being accessed by someone else, so you have to wait if you want to make modification. Now I'm going to go back to process number 1 and just finish the rest of my execution just by, okay, go through that. At the end, when I call end use command and go back to process 2, you can see that my object is no longer set to busy, which means that that process can now acquire the right access to my variable, which I'm doing right now. After I'm done with my modification in process 2, if I go back to process 1, the information updated properly. So this is really cool because it shows you that you can now passing and sharing information among processes just by doing something like this, using the same variable in many processes. Okay, so that's just a simple example. So far we've seen just an isolated processes. Now, what about sharing information at the global standpoint, global scale within the whole application? This is a big topic because there's been a lot of discussion about this. The first thing I want to kind of bring up is it's always important to keep reminding ourselves that the use of inter-process variables are not permitted in preemptive programming, okay? So it breaks the rule and the law of the multi-thread architecture. So we have to come up with a new way again, and that new way is called storage. So the storage, in this case, is a catalog of shared objects, which I described earlier. Now, you can access storage from any running processes and without having to ask 4D to grant you permission, you can read from storage from anywhere. The only time that you have to ask 4D for permission, because we want to avoid contention, that's when you want to make modification or write to your storage. And that's through the use of the, through the execution of the use keywords. Now, although it may appear that there's so many use cases that you can probably think right now, because this is something that many of you probably have been waiting for. But I would urge you, and we actually thought about this, be selective about your selection, right? The best way to share information among processes is still through the use of just the shared objects. Now, if you don't have any other choices, that you have certain requirements, the storage is also there for you. So be selective about your choice. Now, later on today, Laurent Hainaut is going to be talking about this particular feature in more detail in his session. So feel free to join him and ask any kind of questions that you have. And I'm just going to go ahead, leave it at that. But let's go ahead and move on to the next example, which covering the storage. I'm just going to give you a simple example. Now, normally we specify something in the on startup so that we can probably use later. It's almost like a constant in a sense, right? So in this case, I have an on startup here, and I'm going to create a property inside of my storage. Now, this property is basically my connection setting that I'm going to be using at later time. So you can see I have URL, username, and password specified in the storage. And it's done the similar fashion as shared object. So I'm calling use command. Storage is a function or a command that returns the reference to the storage. And then from inside, you can just simply use the dot notation to specify your data or your property. And I'm using the command new shared object because the storage could store the collection, has a collection of shared objects or collections. Now, at later time, let's say I have another method, and I want to take advantage of my storage. I want to make a call to my HTTP server. I can simply write my code like this. Very simple and very powerful. This way, you now have access to the information at the global standpoint. And as you can see, this is really fast in terms of accessing your data, and without needing to explicit ask for protection to the object. Again, it's quite easy to code, and it's really give you a way to avoid any kind of contention and provide a safe in terms of coding. It is pretty intuitive in terms of what you want to do and use with it. It also provides protection to your object and its subdata. So now you've seen the information, how you can share information in preemptive environments. I'm hoping that making your preemptive ready, application preemptive ready is something that is on your development radar. And whether it's for existing project or future project, okay? So that's all the time I have for you guys this morning. I hope you like what you see. And the next presenter I'm gonna bring up on stage is Caroline Brio from 4D France. Come on up.
I'm happy to be here today to talk to you about an essential topic in the enterprise world, which is mobility. Today, more and more employees can perform their jobs from anywhere using a variety of devices and applications. And 4D is an open platform, and this is also true for the mobility aspect. And a lot of our customers are already mobile, either using external development or our 4D mobile solution. Today, 4D customers are building mobile apps using frameworks like Angular or with native developments, and they access the data through the 4D web server. So let's take a minute to focus on some typical user scenarios. So today, all business applications run at least on a desktop. And the number one feature request is to extend these existing applications to mobiles. So let's say you're in sales and you're visiting a customer. You might want to check the list of unpaid invoices so that you can remind your customer you're still waiting for payment. You might want to search for a specific product reference to give more information to your customer. You might also want to update the customer information, just like the email address or the phone number. These are, in fact, pretty simple needs: read, search, and update data. Extending your business application is already possible with 4D Mobile, which was released with 4D v14. 4D Mobile is a full JavaScript solution based on Wakanda and connected with 4D. And 4D Mobile is very powerful, but it requires a deep knowledge of JavaScript and Angular. So this solution is mostly intended for professional web developers. So while we provide professional services for developers just needing a little hand, we've also received requests for something simple to use, a solution that would not require specific expertise, a solution integrated in 4D. I'm excited today here at the 4D Summit to announce the new 4D solution for mobility. 4D for iOS. So before telling you more about the product, and I'm sure you're eager to get more details, so let's take a quick look at the naming. So as the name clearly states, the product is entirely dedicated to the iOS platform. And let me give you some reasons why we made that choice. iOS currently dominates the enterprise market. According to various surveys, the iPhone accounts for about 70 to 90% of enterprise smartphones in use. And when it comes to tablets, it's the iPad or nothing. Another interesting statistic to mention: Apple made more revenue with the iPhone last quarter, Apple made more revenue with the iPhone than all other vendors together. And this is why we've decided to go with iOS first. Okay, so now it's time to tell you more about the 4D for iOS product and what it's built on. So 4D for iOS is a mobile app generator, fully integrated in 4D. It allows you to easily create native mobile apps in pure Swift, as if an iOS developer would have coded it for you, but without you needing to learn any other technology or language. Yeah, thank you. The advantage of a native app versus a web app is that the UI and UX design is fully optimized for mobile devices. And the created application works online, but also offline. Yes, you heard that correctly. Customer will be able to use it in a plane, a tunnel, a train, or in the middle of nowhere. Good. And finally, 4D for iOS is an open solution. It creates a real Xcode project. It means that you can start with 4D for iOS and then enhance it later if you need more advanced features. Okay, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the presentation. But maybe you'd like to see a demo. Yeah. Would you? Okay, so let's do a demo then. Oops. So this is our real estate application, and I'm going to start a new mobile project. So you saw the new item just in the file menu. I'm giving a name to my new project. And you see that I'm arriving at the very first page, a landing page that is briefly introducing 4D for iOS product. And then we'll continue and we'll click on continue to start our project. All right. So just let's stop for a minute. I'm sure you're all wondering, is that really 4D? Or is that a kind of external tool? I can assure you that this is in 4D. By the way, it's a 4D component. So what about the general tab? This tab is dedicated to general information about the mobile app. So we will start by entering the organization name. So read smarter. All right. And the identifier. We'll give a name to our mobile application. Now it's time for us to define the icon that we want to use. So we go to the Finder, and we just have to drag and drop it. Okay. So now we can move on to the next step and move to the Structure tab. This is where we select the tables and fields that we want to use in our application. At this stage, we are going to define a subset of the physical structure, and this subset will be replicated in a local database inside the iPhone. So we select the fields that we want to use in our app. So for the customer table first, we choose desk note, email, first name, last name, phone, and the customer photo. Then we will repeat the same operations for the real estate table and select the fields that we want to use. Okay. Now let's move on to the Label and Icons tab, where we will define a label for each field, which is just basically a kind of display name, and an icon to each field if we want to. So regarding the label, you can see that there is a built-in process that beautifies the display name from the field name. So for instance, if you look at the desk note field, it has been changed to desk space notes, and the underscore has been removed. Same thing for first name and last name. Now let's pick some icons for the tables, and then rename desk note to notes only. You can see that we have a wide list of predefined icons for you. Of course, you can also upload your own icons if you wish. So we select the icons for our field, and now we will do the same for the real estate table. So now question, what are these icons used for? In fact, the table icons will be shown in the tab bar that allows to navigate between tables. And field icons will be used in the detailed views, and you see that later. Now let's move on to the main menu tab. This is the place where you can reorder the tables in the tab bar. So here we will change that to have real estate first. So we just drag and drop, you see, the tables. Next step is about forms. So for each table, we will build a list form and a detailed form. Each form is based on templates, and we provide several templates for each type of form. So we will start with the customer list form. And for this table, we will pick the mosaic template. So once the template has been selected, the next step is to place the different fields in the template. So we'll start by defining on which field the search bar will operate. So here I choose last name. So you see, it's really easy. You just need to drag and drop the fields. And then we select the other fields that we want to display in each cell of the list form. So here we'll use the customer photo, the last name, and the first name. Now let's move on to the detailed forms, staying with the customer table. So here you'll see the list of the different templates for detailed forms, and we're going to select visual contact. And then, same operation, we drag and drop our fields. Easy, right? Not too difficult for now. Okay. Then we repeat the same operation for the real estate table. So we go back to the list forms, and we will select vertical cards. And now we're going to define the city field as a search field, and then we place the other fields. So city, photo, and the price, sorry, I couldn't read. For the detailed form, we're going to pick the left cut header template and drag and drop our fields. All right. So now we are ready to build and run the application. So we're moving to the Build tab. And first, we start by selecting the device that we want to test with. So here, I'll pick iPhone 10. And now, here's the hard part. We're going to build the application. To do so, there's just one button to click. And that's it. It's ongoing. In fact, this process may take some time, since it's performing a lot of operations in the background. From the 44 iOS project, we generate an Xcode project. Then we start Xcode in the background. We launch a project build. We start the simulator. And then we are going to open our mobile app within the simulator. And here we are. We're now ready to play with our Real Smarter app. And so you see the bottom of the iPhone screen. This is the tab bar I was talking about. So you see the tab bar to navigate between the tables, so real estate and customer. And you'll recall we had changed the table order. We had selected some icons. This is what you see here. So you see just a few clicks in the editor, and I've got a real mobile app running. So now we can browse through the different real estate properties. So you see we had selected a vertical card template as a list form. Now we're looking at the detailed form. Did you see that fancy effect? Then we're going to search for a property in a particular location. All right. So let's say we're looking for a property in Los Angeles. Great, we found one. Perfect. And now let's move on to the customer table. So the customer table is using the Mosaic template as a list form. Then we can check the customer details. And again, you can see the icons that we had selected earlier in the editor. All right, so to finish, let me show you something more. Let me show you how 44 iOS makes it possible to create mobile apps with their own identity. We're going to modify our Real Smarter app to get a different user experience. So to do so, we'll just go back to the Form tab, and we're going to change the template we used. So customer table first. So going back to forms, list form. We will change the list form to cube. And the detailed form to simple contact. Note that we don't have to drag and drop again the fields. This editor is smart enough to recall the fields that have the correct types. And now, let's move on with the real estate table. So we're going to change the list form to horizontal cards, and the detailed form to parallax header. All right, and finally, one last step. We will modify the application icon. So we go back to the Finder, and we're going to drag and drop a new icon. Okay, then we just have to build and run again. So again, there's a lot of operations happening in the background. So we start with the 4D4iOS project. We generate an Xcode project. We start Xcode in the background. We launch a project build. And I'm sure you're eager to see the results of our modifications. Be patient. It's coming. Hey, did you see that? The application's main color has changed. It's actually automatically extracted from the mobile app icon. And you can see how the animations and transitions give a different look and feel. So you see just a few clicks, and we really modify the user experience. Yes, some applause would be good. Okay, so that's great, right? So now let's go back to the slides. All right, so just to recap. So with 4D4iOS, you can create your mobile app in a few steps. First, you start by by entering your application's main information. Then you select the tables and fields to be locally replicated in the device. Then you build your list form and detailed form for each table based on templates. Next, you define the deployment information, such as the 4D server production URL. And when all this has been done, you generate the mobile app in a single click. You test it in the simulator. And once you're happy with it, you can upload it to a real device to test in real conditions. And finally, you can deploy your app either in-house or through the App Store. So this presentation was a sneak peek into 4D4iOS. Our objective is, by the way, to release the first version in beta in the second half of 2018. So stay tuned. And if you want to see more about 4D4iOS, please join my breakout session later today. So step into mobility with 4D4iOS. 4D makes it simple. And now let me introduce Will Taylor from 4D US for the next topic. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Caroline. Yes, my name is William Taylor, and I'm 4D US's Technical Account Manager. And it's my pleasure today to present you 4DView Pro. 4DView Pro is a product that is designed to simplify 4D development when displaying data in advanced lists, and by helping you to build elaborate spreadsheets. Now, 4DView Pro is not a plugin. It is a fully integrated module in 4D, making it easy to deploy and to maintain. But let's stop for a minute. Excuse me. Why did 4D start this initiative? Well, as we all know, 4DView is not 64-bit ready. So 4DView Pro is the way forward to 64-bit. And to make things easier, for those of us who are currently already using 4DView, you can now use 4DView Pro with the same license. So saving this, that's pretty good. So let's look at some interesting features of 40View Pro. Let's start with the displaying the data as a list. The list box has and continues to be a major part of 4D since its introduction in version 2004, allowing developers to display their data naturally and simply. And when it came time for 4D to add a more advanced solution, it was obvious that expanding the list box functionality was the best way to accomplish this task. It seems natural to take 40View Pro or 40View, add some pro features, and give you guys 40View Pro. Give us 40View Pro. All this means is that the 4D list box is now an even more powerful tool. Some examples of these pro features include allowing a developer to fill a list box with any combination of data types, whereas before, you were only limited to one. Or by allowing a list box's cell height or width to be adjusted dynamically or programmatically. This helps you ensure that all the data, that your data is always This helps to ensure that your data is always displayed correctly. And the good news is that this feature is now fully finished in version 17. That's good. Thanks, guys. So, 40View's main usage was to incorporate spreadsheets into your 4D application. Now, because 40View Pro is an integrated tool, a developer has full control of that release's available feature set, over your document's contents, and of who can use them and how. For instance, 40View Pro provides the end user with a spreadsheet that is able to handle complex calculations with information that is pre-populated from your 4D database, say a complicated invoice. Now, 40View Pro is based on an existing and well-engineered product. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And we've given you access to this object. We've given you access to this module in a dedicated form object. And you will see more and more 40View Pro features with every upcoming R release. The first step was made available last summer. So as I previously mentioned, 40View Pro is based on an existing and well-engineered spreadsheet application. And thanks to this, we're able to provide you an incredible feature set from the get-go, like cell spanning, freezing, and charts and dashboards. More about that later. And since it's based on a great application, we are able to provide you with more than 400 formulas that are already built in, such as sum, time, match. So, now the interesting part. Why does this make your life easier? Well, we all know how important your existing documents are. So, document conversion was the first thing we did, and it's already there. And I'll show you right now a quick example of how this just works. So here, what we have here is our 4D, sorry, I need to look at there. What we have here is our 4D invoice, or 40View invoice. And on the left, or the right, you have your converted 40View Pro invoice from your 40View invoice. Now, as you can see here, I hope you can see, we're not just converting the data from cell to cell, we're also bringing over any formulas that you have implemented in your 40View invoice. That's a big. And also, what's interesting, even more interesting, is you now have the ability to add charts and graphs in your 40View Pro document easily from pre-populated from your 40 database. So, pretty nice. So that's it for me today. Thanks for your attention, and stay tuned for more 40View Pro features in every upcoming R release. So now, I hope you're all sitting down, because up next is Thomas Small from 40 Germany, and he'll give you a sneak peek into the future of the 40 language.
Good morning. Order. This is the very first time in our history where the feature set and not a product got its own name. The very first time, and I think this might show you how important it is. The feature set is so huge that the masterclass following this keynote, given by Laurent Ribaudet, is only about order. It's the first time to have a masterclass as part of the summit, a session taking all slots in parallel. I give you here a quick overview about what it is and the main benefits. And Laurent will show much more. He will give you ideas what you can do with it, and the vision he had in mind when he was working on it in the last years, and where he wants to go in the following years. And then on Thursday, the full day, the full expert training is only about order, given by Jean-Pierre. Jean-Pierre will go in details and show you how to compare the old and the new way to do things. A full day, only about order. It's the biggest feature set we had in 30 years. So, long introduction. What is order? O is for object. And you might think now, objects, I know it. Yeah, we added objects some years ago. As type in the language, as object field, and now even with object notation. It's a really important feature, but you see only the tip of the iceberg. So I hear some in the room, object language, we finally did it, object language. Yeah, the language will become much more object-oriented. But statement behind here, this is already possible with version 16R6. It's not yet order. There's much more. O in order is not just the object type. It is not only the object language. It's not even only an object database. Imagine you could use the whole database just like an object. DS is for data store. It represents the whole database. Employee is the name of a table. All is a way to access all records in this way. 0 is one of many ways to select one record of that selection. And first name is the name of a field. The language allows in a single line to express complex access of records, handling a database just like an object. The whole database becomes an object. Thanks. And even the reverse. So let's say you have an object, maybe JSON received from a REST request. What about you use an object as a database? The same syntax, same language, same commands? Use the database as an object, or use any object as a database. The R in order is not for revolution, even it is one. It is for relational. We are all creating business applications, and for very good reasons, we are all using transactional, relational database systems. There were several object databases on the market, none very successful, as it is very hard to create a business application without relations. People try to use mappers named ORM, object relational mappers, to get a binding between object language and relational database. The result was poor performance and huge resource needs. Our strength is that we are an integrated system, database, language, user interface, all in one. And this allows us to access a new world. 4D allows to name a relation, and I assume most of you never cared so far. So previously, you could only use one relation between two tables. Let's say you have invoices and customers, and you need two different relations, shipping and invoicing. This was impossible in 4D so far. You could have two relations, but you could not control which one to use. But if you name a relation, and with the order language, you can specify simply the name of relation, here shipping to, and city is the field in the related table, to specify where to search. And if you now say, this is a fake example, a real world example is much more complex, yes, of course. In the real world, you have invoices, customers, and addresses. You have three tables. So what? It's quite easy. You just write customer.shipping.city. You can chain that. You can specify which relations to use over several tables. So easy. Still a single line of code. To make it even more complex, I cannot see it because everything is dark, but I can imagine nobody ever used recursive relations. When I detected them 30 years ago, it was awesome for me. I never saw something like that. And when I tried to use them, as soon as you tried to use it, you was losing your record. You could not really use recursive relations. So imagine you have one table, people, and you have two relations going to the same table, one named father and one named mother. And you want to use them. With dot syntax, it is so easy. ds people, query, and then simply by using the name of relation, father.father, I can find all people with a grandfather named John. A single line. Try to imagine to do that with SQL or even with 4D. You need code like that. And now it's so simple. Of course, all is about data. So let's talk about current record and current selection. For many years, this was the key feature in 4D. The current record makes everything so easy. It's easy to display and easy to work with data. 4D automatically handles everything. And similar for the current selection. So easy and so convenient. Just one issue. There's only one current record. So the hassle was always how to get data from two different records at the same time. So now imagine you have an unlimited number of current records, an unlimited number of current selections in a single process at the same time. As easy as before, just unlimited. In the slide before, we queried, but we didn't really use the result. So the first line returns us not a copy of data. It's not an array with data. It is a collection of record references. And we can use this variable anywhere we want in our code, like to use the result and now to order it. And you can use as many results, meaning as many selections, or as many records as you have local variables, unlimited. .4D integrates the object access inside the system. It's everywhere. You can use order in the language, or of course in forms. Even in a list box, you can simply assign the result we just did, the result of a query, as a collection to a list box, and then use it. The data could come from the result of a query from your local database, or from the result from a received JSON answer from another database system. It's the same code, the same form, could be used for data from different sources. No code modification, no new testing. Order is much more than a language. It will change the way you handle or display data. It will change the way you work with data. But don't worry, all your existing code will continue to work. We will continue to support the old language concept. Everything just works as before. You can choose the old way or order. And even better, you can mix both. Start new projects or models with order while keeping the existing code unchanged. But still there's a major impact for you. If you're looking for new developers, you will feel very different when you present your source code and your development team. Because when you have a very modern concept with technology not available elsewhere, it will make recruitment much easier for you. And of course, the same for us. When we are talking to new customers, it's a very different thing with a very modern approach and a unique way to allow object-oriented usage of a relational database. As a recap, some direct benefit for you. You get optimistic or pessimistic logging, whatever you want, for every single record you choose. This allows larger installations, easier coding. You get automatic unloading of record, automatic, no need to make reduced selection anymore. Why? Quite easy. As you saw, the result of a query, if it's a selection or a record, the reference is a local variable. If a variable is not existing anymore, automatically unloaded. Developer cannot forget it, no need for testing. And as we have as many current records and current selections as we want, in parallel, no need anymore to use SQL or push and pop record just to avoid to lose the current record. This was just a little peek. Laurent will go after the coffee break much more in the detail. So it's not giving you a training how to use order, but he will show you what you can do with it, give you ideas what is possible, and why he designed it that way. If you cannot follow everything, don't worry. This is a completely new way. It will keep us busy for the following years. And we'll fill a lot of breakout sessions in the following summits. But it gives you an idea about the power we provide with order. And Jean-Pierre will spend all day on Thursday to teach about the details. So if you did not sign in yet, we have salespeople outside. You're welcome to share on Saturday. Everything what I talked about so far is in version 17, going better very soon. And Laurent will show you a little bit more, as usual. He will go 17R, maybe even up to 18, to tell you where we want to go in the future. Last for the summit, we gave a commitment that we believe in the 40 language, and we will continue to improve it. And most of you expected some small changes here and there. And this is just so, and you will see much more in the masterclass, we drastically enhance the language. And this will have major impact on how you will write code in the future, being more efficient, coding faster, and you can produce user interfaces impossible before.
So I'm happy to be here today to give you an update about 40 Pro, our integrated text engine. 40 Pro has grown with 40v17, and we have a lot of fantastic things to show you today. So let's start from the beginning. What exactly is 40 Pro? 40 Pro is a powerful text engine, entirely programmable, and fully integrated into 40 and its database, which is a key strength. It has an unlimited number of uses. You can programmatically generate catalog, invoices, report, send an automatic emailing running batches on a server at night without any user intervention. And user can also use 40 Pro as a classic word processor to create letters, quotes, or to modify templates. Moreover, publishing your documents on the web is just seamless with 40 Pro. So before going further in the presentation, let me recall you why we started the 40 Pro project. Oh, thank you. The historical programmable text engine in 40 is 40 Write, and it is widely used. 40 Write is powerful, but it's also very old. It's based on Carbon APIs, which Apple decided not to support on 64-bit platforms. Because 40 was fully aware of the importance of 40 Write for you, we have decided to do a full rewrite to provide you with a modern solution ready for the future. And this is 40 Pro. But we're not stopping here. We're not only going to give you the same abilities that 40 Write had. The point of rewriting everything was also to be able to add new features that we couldn't add in 40 Write. And by the way, 40 Pro already surpasses 40 Write, and I'll show you how later in the presentation. So 40 Pro runs on both 32 and 64-bit platforms. This means that you can use it in your 32-bit application, start to replace the location where you used 40 Write by 40 Pro, and you can move that step by step, and it allows a smooth migration. So now let's move on and focus on the development side for a moment. So 4D Right Pro takes advantage of the most modern concept in 4D. The concept and programming are very different from 4D Right, so yes, you'll have to rewrite your code. Some customers started to do it and are already seeing benefits. And it is true, it is some work for you, but it is work for the future. The 4D Right Pro APIs widely use ranges, which is just basically objects. And this makes your code elegant, compact, and so fast to write. And something else important to notice, 4D Right Pro has a small amount of commands, and it's another benefit of using objects. And fewer commands facilitates coding. And now let's talk about UI. 4D Right Pro has been designed with some automatic mechanisms to easily build user interfaces. This powerful tool are standard actions. So let me show you an example demonstrating what you can do with standard actions. So here is a simple 4D Right Pro document. I'm sure you all noticed the nice ribbon at the top of the dialog. And if you like it, it's already on the 4D blog. It's already published. And you know what? This toolbar was created only using standard actions, no code. There are about 100 of standard actions for 4D Right Pro. You can control whatever you want with it, the font, the color, the styles, the margin, and so much more. Another benefit when assigning a standard action to interface objects is that the standard action automatically handles the activation and deactivation of the object depending on the context. If you want to learn more about the 4D Right Pro standard actions, I invite you to go to the 4D Right Pro tool that is done, I think, by Angelo today. And let's move on to discover what else 4D Right Pro has to offer. So with 4DB17, the feature set has become larger and larger. Beyond the UI part we've just discussed, 4D Right Pro makes it possible to create complex documents with an advanced layout fully by programming. We've added a horde of features. Horizontal rulers, support of hyperlinks of pictures, image clipping to the paper edge, headers and footer management, and so much more. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words, so let's look at a mix of document examples, all created with 4D Right Pro. You can build any document you like: invoice, quotes, reports, brochures, flyers, newsletters, business cards. There's no limit to your imagination. So speaking about catalog and brochures, I have chosen this nice illustration with a wonderful sea view because I'm thinking about taking a vacation after the 4D Summit. But I'm not sure where to go. So I will need a travel agency brochure to select my next destination. So let's build one with 4D Right Pro. So we know that some of you have done some extensive 4D Right programming to create some very complex documents. And I'm sure you're all wondering, can 4D Right Pro do the same? So let's see what 4D Right Pro is capable of. And here, we don't want to create a basic brochure. We want to create a complex travel agency brochure fully by programming. So by a complex brochure, I mean a document with header and footers, with multiple embedded images, entirely generated by programming, by looping on database records. And here we are, a nice summer 2018 brochure. So let's open it in preview. We'll see that as a two-page display to see it better. So there is a front cover, an introduction, a summary, different sites with a point of interest, as well as a list of lodging, and finally, a back cover. So nice, isn't it? You all sleeping? OK, so now let's close the preview and go to the front cover. So do you see the 4D travel picture at the bottom, this is actually an image in absolute position. The picture can be placed at a pixel-based position, exactly where you want, and you can move it with the handles, or simply resize it, as we show. Something great with picture in absolute position is that you can put it in front or behind the text. And of course, encode images can also entirely be handled by programming as well. So now let's move on to the summary page. So the horizontal ruler shows that there is a tab at the far right side of the page. You can see the small black triangle. And this tab is actually using leading characters. In our brochure generation code, we have chosen a point as tab leading character. And now we're going to change it to another symbol. So let me show you how it can be done with the UI. So first, let's move our tab, just to show it's real. And then we will right-click to open the menu. So we go to the leading character item. You see that there is a wide list of predefined characters, but we will choose Other to select a custom symbol of our choice. All right, so we'll pick a small white triangle. OK, so now we've customized our summary page. And now let's move on to go to a page dedicated to a destination. So let's look at a page about Southsea, where you can find some of the tallest sand dunes in the world. As you can see, the destination page has multiple columns. So let's enter some text in the first column. So you see, there are already columns. The text is wrapping to the next column as we add more text. And did you realize that even if the destination pages have multiple columns, it's not the case for the whole document? If you'll recall, we've already seen the front cover and the summary page. In 4D Write Pro, multi-column can be handled not only for the whole document, as in 4D Write, but also per section. And that wasn't possible with 4D Write. Another example with multiple columns is the introduction page. So as we've already seen, we can have text in multiple columns, but we can also have images. So finally, let's go to the lodging table, which lists the hotel facilities for the different destinations. Yes, you can see that correctly. This is actually a table. It was the #1 feature request for 4D Write, and your wish has finally come true. With 4D Write Pro, you can insert and fill tables by programming. But let's check if they are really real tables. So here you can see how the selection behaves. You can select, when you are selecting a cell ranges, you can also select just a column, like the first column, and change the font size to, let's say, 11. Then we can enter some text in a cell. And you see, with table, the text will automatically wrap to fit into the column sign you've defined. It won't break when your data changes. Great, isn't it? More good news. You can also add tables to your header and footers, as shown on the Washington, D.C. page here. So what you see actually in the footer is a table with some text on the right and a page number on the left. And multiple column per sections, real tables. So you see that there are already areas where 4D Write Pro surpasses 4D Write. Now let's dig into some details and look at the code to generate the destination part for our brochure. So now we are looking at the insert site method that creates the destination pages from the information stored in the database. So in this method, we will first loop through the continents and then through the different sites here. So for each destination, we start by creating a bookmark using WP create bookmark command. In fact, the navigation that you've seen using the pop-up menu was done using a bookmark. And then we insert the description here, plus a column break. And so it will fit in the two first columns, sorry. And then we will insert the destination highlight. Now we use the new WP get elements command, which returns a collection of elements contained in the range that you pass to the command. And here, we just get a collection of paragraphs. And then we use WP set attributes to style them differently, whether it's the description or the two highlight parts. And since we're done with the text insertion part, we insert a section break for the next destination. OK, now we're going to style our range. To do so, we use standard actions here to manipulate the sections by programming and split it into 3 columns. We also define the space between each column, as well as the top margin. Then we call WP get position to retrieve the current page number. In fact, we want to arrange the page layout differently depending on whether the page is odd or even. And next, we insert our 3 images in absolute position using WP add picture. And for each picture, we define on which page it will be inserted, as well as the horizontal and vertical alignment. Now, we insert the small map that is just at the top of the page. It's also an image in absolute position, and it's on the top left side for even pages and on the top right side for odd pages. We'll work on the header next. So after getting a reference on it, we are just creating a range. And we insert the destination name and the country's name. Then we focus on the footer, sorry. And I said earlier that the footer contained the table. You recall that? So you can now clearly see it. After getting a reference using WP get footer, we are actually inserting a table using WP insert table command. Then we append rows to the table using WP table append row. And for even page, we put the conditions on the first column and the page number, and vice versa for odd pages. As a next step, we get a reference on a particular cell from the table we created earlier using WP table get cells command. This actually allows us to style the cells using the traditional WP set attribute commands. Then we insert the 4D expression that returns the page number. So here it is $WP underscore page number. And finally, we populate the summary table for each destination. We first add the continent name, and when it's a new continent, and the destination name with a dash and the country. So that's it. You see that the concepts are pretty similar for the different parts we've shown. So first you create a range, or you get a reference on an existing range. Whenever you want to add to change the style of the range, you just use WP set attributes. And if you want to add some text, you just use WP set text. So now let's go back to the slides. OK, so we've already seen a bunch of documents during the presentation. And they're all new documents freshly created with 4D Write Pro. However, we know that most of you have existing applications running for years, and you have a lot of existing 4D-Write documents. Of course, you can import them to 4D-Write Pro. We've already demonstrated that during the last summit. But I wanted to mention that the import functionality has been continuously enhanced feature after feature to ensure the best compatibility level. And again, 4D-Write Pro allows a smooth migration. You can mix 4D-Write and 4D-Write Pro in the same application. It allows you to work on your application step by step. So, did you move to 4D-Write Pro? If you're still planning to or are currently on the move, don't panic, you're not alone. We've got an extensive catalog of material available to guide you through this process. 25 blog posts, 5 demos, 11 videos, 16 how do I examples demonstrating every single feature. And if you want to see more, attend the 2 breakout sessions that are dedicated to 4D-Write Pro today. 4D-Write Pro is powerful, ready for the future, and it already exceeds 4D-Write in some areas. So enter a new dimension with 4D-Write Pro. And now let me introduce Thomas Moll from 4D Germany, who will talk to you about internal code sharing. Thank you very much.
Good morning. I'm here to talk about a secret. What about if you would share the code of our internal dialogues? What about if you could get the dialogues and modify them as you want? Wouldn't that be great? And you know, we did it years ago. So this is why I said it's a secret. Every time when I talk to customers, I realize they seem to have missed it. It is not new, we really did it. So we started with the object library with 40 widgets we have in the library, like the date picker, the time picker, and the search picker. This was the first ones. And here's a simple example why this is interesting. So while the widgets are usually simple to use, just drag and drop them and embed them in the application, sometimes it's the tiny things. Like here, it is only the color which is not really fitting exactly. The application has a light blue background, and you want to have, and the date picker has a gray background. It is just a tiny thing. It's not a lot, but it makes it not nice. So having the source, you open it, change the background, recompile, finished. It's not a big work, but it makes a complete different impression for the end user. More complex example is the 4D-Write Pro assistant or wizard. This is a really complex one. As Caroline just shown, we have a lot of toolbars in 4D-Write Pro which you can use simply by standard actions. With 4D-Write Pro wizard is the opposite. Everything is done with code. So it's a really complex one. But maybe it's too complex. Maybe we want to change a little bit. Remove some actions, remove some actions, move them to other pages, or just fit it to your application. So taking the source code, open it, modify, and do whatever you want. The source code is available in the 4D forum. There's a section in the upper left named 4D Partners or Worldwide Partners Forum. And here you find the source code for the SVG component, for the widgets, for the progress bar, the SVG area, label editor, and so on. And you can take the source code, we are updating it every 3 months, and modify as you want. So a lot of you are using the SVG component, and sometimes I read in the INAG or on forums, I missed that feature, I missed that, why it's working like that. So what? Open the source, modify it as you want. And don't forget that source is a huge knowledge base. Why not learn from our developers? Take a look how we are doing things. For example, take the label editor. The label editor is using the SVG area. So just modify it. We have customers saying, I need barcodes in the label editor. So what? Use the source code, use the barcode component, merge both together, and finished. You have the source, you can do whatever you want. And one of the most complex dialogues in 4D is the 4D server administration dialog. It is an old one, we shipped it first time with V11, but it contains a lot of information about the current server, about the system activity, in text, in pictures, in animations. And we got so many requests from customers to modify this dialog. Customers want to have it in a different way. Some customers wanted to hide information. Others wanted to add information. Some wanted to make the displayed information depending on the user authentication. Others wanted to remove some pages, to add their own pages, or to display it in a web area or in a web browser. Everybody wants to do it in a different way. So we quickly realized we could not do it ourselves because there's no real specs. Everybody wants to have something else. So the perfect list of reasons to rewrite the whole dialog in pure 4D code so we can share it with you. So we can publish the source and you can modify what you want. The problem for today, a lot of this information we are presenting is internally used by accessing C++ functions which are not exposed to 4D. So what we did in the last month, or in the last R releases, we added more and more features to access this information by 4D code. We added new commands to retrieve all information for connected users, running processes, what the processes are doing. We added features to retrieve info of the system, about the CPU, about the memory, about the hard disk, about the volumes, about the system environment. We added information to fetch data for the installed, available, used licenses. And for the web server, SQL Server, and so on. This is a huge list, and we are still not finished. So we will need to have some more R releases to have everything, but there's already a lot of things available. So here a demo what you already can do today with V17. And as you will notice, this is not a 4D app, this is a browser, Safari. And in the browser, we show the stuff you are used to see in the administration dialog, list of processes, hardware informations, what the users are doing, even in the real-time monitor. And all this runs in a browser on a smartphone, and you can do it today. And if you want to see how it works, or how to do it, we have a session from Angelo where he shows you the source, how to do it yourself. And that's it. And now Ed, thanks.
Some of you are here because 4D is probably becomes one of your best tools to develop your application. And for me, it's probably one of the best development tools around in terms of building UI and building your code. Now, this morning, I want to spend some time talking about dynamic forms. So normally, we build a form through the form editor, right? Now, what about dynamic? Back in version 12, we introduced a command called object duplicate. Now, this command allows you to build a somewhat dynamic form and elements that will be rendered on the fly. Now, I use the term somewhat because it actually allows you to duplicate and not create. So to have a truly dynamic form, you must have a dynamic form definition or data-driven definition, form definition. Now, starting in version 17, you will be able to open a form that you built based on a form definition that you have in an object in a memory. This is something new in version 17. I want to show you just a simple demo just to go ahead and get into what I'm talking about. So here is a simple method. You can see that there are several lines of new object commands, right? So I'm using new object command to build my form elements. And all of them are composed together into a single object that I will insert into the command open form window and dialog command. If you look down at the bottom, you'll see that the actual form variable, which is an object variable, being inserted as an input parameter. Now let's go ahead and execute this method. Okay, maybe a little small, but you can see it. Just a simple dialog. We have a title of the window, a static text, as well as one button. At the moment, the button doesn't do anything. There's no action associated with it. So let's make some changes to the definition of the form. Let's go back to the method. The first thing I'm going to do is, instead of the term hello world, we'll change it to something more appropriate to our event here. So hello for the summit. and then down to the button element. I'm going to give it a standard action, okay, allowing it to interact with the user. So I set it to accept. Now, let's go back and execute the method again. Now you can see that the changes I made to the definition of the form, which is the static text, reflect on the screen. Now I have Hello 40 Summit, as well as the button is now interacting with my click. That's really cool. All right, this is something small. Okay, there'll be more. But I want to start with something that you guys can see right away, that it is data-driven, right? We are able to dynamically change the form definition, which will be rendered on the fly and interactively work with the user. So besides having the form definition loaded into an object, you can save the form definition onto the disk in the form of JSON file. For example, let's start with this. Again, another dialog that has a bit more elements on the form. So normally when you think of a form, or even the content inside the form, such as properties, it's almost like the construct itself is quite similar to a JSON and in terms of dependency. So it is actually quite natural for the transition from a form definition to go into a JSON file. I'm going to start with something simple. So to build a form like that, right? Normally when we have a form, a new form, you will see that you'll be able to specify the window title, as well as the definition, which is the width and the height of the form. So we start with something simple on the top, window title set to quick registration, width and height. And in every form in 4D, there are always two pages, page 0 and page 1. Now in this case, I'm not going to set anything for page 0. So I'm going to set null as the initial element, which is the element 0 in the collection, pages collection. For page number 1, I'm going to start adding one element at a time so you can see what it looks like. So I have now another element, which is, we call it objects, right? So within this objects, it will contain all of the elements that you will have within that page. So the first thing I'm going to do is to add an icon. The one thing before I go on, I want to point out something that for every element that you're adding into a form, there will always be two obvious property, which is the first thing is type, the type of your object. The next thing will be the coordinates, which is the left, top, right, bottom. You will always have to specify those things. So in this case, for icon object, I'm setting the type to picture, and then the picture element inside of the icon object, it's basically the path to the picture on the disk. And then at the end, I put in the coordinates of that icon, and that's it. The next thing is, again, another static text doing the same format, that is starting with the type of the object, which is text, and then the actual text value itself. Now, being that this is a text object, you will obviously want to set some type of font, right? So we have font family, font size that you would set to the object. And then we end with the coordinates of the object. All right, so similar to the last one, we have label and then enterable object. So I'm just going to skip the label because it's the same as the last one. But for enterable object, so I'm representing first name, allowing the user to input the data. So the type will be set to input. Enterable is a property where you can set whether the object will allow the user input or not. And then coordinates, the last thing would be the data source. Now the data source, I'm setting it to a field that's coming from a table. The rest is pretty much the same. So I'm not going to bore you with the rest of the stuff. And then we end up with the 2 buttons down below. Okay? So let's say we saved that definition onto the disk already. So from the 4D coding standpoint, we could reference that path on the disk into maybe a variable, and then immediately calling the command openForm window and dialog command with the given path inserted as the parameter. And 4D will automatically render and allowing that window to appear on the screen, interacting with the user. Okay? All right, so now let's talk about some real world scenario here, because this is something that most of you have been through it. Let's say you're working with a customer. You have your application deployed in the production. Your customer called you one day and said, I want some changes done on that interface, right? It could be just something as simple as text size, the position of your UI, or even the placement and stuff like that. So what do? You go back to your development environment, work with your copy, recompile it, repackage it, upload to your customer, call your customer tell all the users to log out because this is production, go back to the server, shut down the server, replace it with a new one, restart, tell the user to log back in. It's a lot of process, right? So what I'm about to show you will actually sort of minimize the number of things that you may not want to deal with, right? So I'm going to give you an example here. We have 4D server running. The first thing I'm going to do is to minimize this 4D server, and then launch a copy of my 4D. I will connect to it as 4D remote. Okay, so at this time, I'm already connected. So what I want to do next is to open up my quick registration form. This is the same exact form you saw earlier. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding some information in there, okay? I'm going to pick someone who's not famous at all. John Snow. I'm going to put in jsnow@winterscoming.com as email. Save that information, and then I'm just going to opening up my list form, which is my data view, just to show you that the information I have just added is in the database, okay? So I have John Snow listed as line number 14. That's great. I'm going to go back to the form, the quick registration form earlier. And just to show you where I'm getting this form from. All right, let's open up my Finder. And this is where I have my database running from. So open up the package contents. Go to the resource folder, forms. And that's where my form is residing. So I have the form saved under this as JSON file. And if I'm scrolling up a little bit, you'll see that there are a lot of elements in the form, which is exactly what you saw in the earlier part of the demo. Now, let's say my developer actually just gave me a call from the Magic phone, just received the call just right now, telling me that he had uploaded an updated version of the form I asked for. And in this case, I'm going to close this form, and again, without shutting down anything, right? My client's still connected, my server is still running. I'm going to go to the location where my developer has uploaded. That's the file, make a copy of that file, go back to my package, database package contents folder, resources, forms, and then replace my current form with the new one. Okay? Again, there's no restarting, there's no shutting down at this point. I'm going to go ahead and go back to my 4D remote. Move that table upward a little bit because it's already running, so we're not going to touch it. Go back to the same option, open up quick registration form. You can see right away, I have the new updated form running along side by side with the old ones, right? This is, the behavior is almost the same, except that I have added 2 fields. And also, instead of using the label, which is the field label, I move everything into the placeholder. So the look and feel has changed with additional functionality, and yet I'm still maintaining the functionality of the core of this feature. So if I save this information, I'm just going to go ahead and close that form, go back to data view. Immediately, you can see that I have another entry added down the bottom. That's really cool and fantastic way to deploy and deliver your real-time deployment. So what do you think? So that's sort of the process that you can minimize, right? There are a number of things that we do often, and with this type of feature, it actually comes in really handy and helps you build something and deliver something to your customer or your clients in a timely manner.
So we've already shown a lot of great features today. So you see that there is a lot of new stuff coming in 4D, and it means that you, as a 4D developer, will have a lot of new features to become familiar with. And to take full advantage of order, of dynamic forms as just shown, or to move to 4D Right Pro, you'll need more than just the documentation. And this is why I'll talk to you about the 4D blog, which in the last 2 years has become a key tool for the 4D product communication. But the blog is not only about product communication. It is also a developer training tool. So let's take a few minutes to look at what you can find on the blog and how you can benefit from it. So for those who are not yet aware, the blog is the place where you, as a 4D developer, can find essential technical information. You can learn all about the new features, as well as tech tips to demonstrate what can be done with 4D. Something important to note, the blog is public. It means that anyone can access it, you as a 4D customer, but also your own customers, if they are interested in the 4D technology. The blog would be nothing without the 4D bloggers. Most of them are product owners from the product team. This is my team. And as a reminder, the main role of the product owner is to represent the customer, so you, from within the engineering team, when developing new features. And what's great about the blog is that the product owner who specified the new feature can present it directly to you. They can highlight the benefits of the feature. They can also explain you how the feature works and why it has been designed in a certain way. So new features are always published in the beta version first. And the beta test phase is actually a crucial step in the release concept. It's the perfect time for the product and engineering teams to get your feedback about the new features, to take it into account in the product. And to help you to provide feedback, we take full advantage of the blog to provide you with the most complete information about each feature. So let's look at an example of a 4D Right Pro feature. So after a quick introduction, there is a download button to get the application database example, which is the well-known How Do I. When it makes sense, we also publish videos. The videos let you see at a glance what can be done with the feature. Then if you think the topic is interesting, you can even go further, downloading the beta version, downloading the example, and explore them. And as you can see, the blog is also illustrated with some code samples. All right, so give feedback. I know that you're all busy, that it's not always possible for you to dedicate some time to look at the beta. And in this case, the blog is still useful for you, and I'll tell you how. So let's say that one of your customers asks for a new feature in your application. Your first thought could be, OK, what will be the time and cost for me to implement it? Another way of thinking is to check whether 4D already developed it, or if the feature is coming soon. So if you are a regular reader of the blog, you already have all answers. Even if you're not on the current version, you will know which version of 4D you will work next. In short, the blog can help you to adapt your own development strategy. So the blog is about upcoming features, yes, but it's also about 4D product news, application, and code examples, product videos, and tech tips. So I really look forward to seeing you soon on the 4D blog. And now please welcome Keisuke Miyako on stage from 4D Japan. Thank you very much.
New users can learn to use an app really fast if the interface has a familiar look and feel. And on the other hand, if the interface is somewhat different to what they're normally used to, well, they can still adapt, but they might say that the experience could be better. And on that point, there's one feature in 4D on Windows that is often being talked about. And that is the Multiple Document Interface, or MDI, known for the main background window inside which all other windows are contained. And to be clear, MDI is not unique to 4D. It is a standard interface design used by other applications as well. Word 97, or Excel 2003, PowerPoint 2007. These are all MDI applications. The MDI naturally groups all windows that belong to the same application. It prevents documents from being mixed up with those that belong to another application. In that sense, MDI was designed as and continues to be a practical solution for applications that need to manage multiple documents. In recent years, however, many applications have adopted a single document interface, or SDI. Well, Outlook is one example. Word and Excel, which both started out as MDI applications, have since switched to SDI. An SDI application typically represents a single document. Perhaps the difference between the two options, it could be explained like this. MDI makes it easier for the user to switch between multiple documents within an application. SDI, by contrast, makes it easier for the user to switch applications. You know, SDI support in 4D has long been the #1 feature request, well, for many years actually, which is why we're very pleased to announce that SDI mode in 4D is finally here. Now, on the technical side, this was a huge commitment. The entire user interface layer had to be totally rewritten to remove any dependencies on the Artura Mac2Win library, which was a core component of 4D. Now, to see this exciting new feature in action, please watch the following demo. So here we have a typical 4D application. We have an employer table and a list form displaying the current selection of that table. And each record can be displayed in a detailed form. We also have another table, I think it's a products table. Again, the list form displays the current selection, and each record can be displayed in a detailed form. Now, you could say that each list form and each detailed form represents a digital document. And in that sense, this application is designed to manage multiple documents. Now, if we switch to design mode, and go to database settings. There you are. You'll notice that there is a new checkbox in the interface page. Use SDI mode on Windows is an option, a new option, available for engine-merged applications on Windows at 64-bit. So we're going to activate that option and start building a custom application. So that method actually calls the command build application. So you see that a new folder has been created on the desktop, and that's going to contain our newly built custom application. Here it is. So let's go inside the folder and double-click to launch. Okay. Wait. So here you are, a 4D application running in SDI mode. It's the exact same application, except we no longer have that background window. We just have the initial splash window. And you might notice that the splash window now has its own menu bar. This menu bar used to belong to the background window. Like I said, it's the exact same application, so we can display list of employees just as we did before. But because we don't have that background window, this window can go anywhere on the desktop. There you are. And you can select and open multiple records, just as we did before. These. Record, record, record. There. You see, running an application in SDI mode doesn't limit your application to a single document. You can still manage multiple documents. And what's cool about running an application in SDI is that each of these document window are nicely represented in the toolbar at the bottom of the screen. See, it's a nice integration with the system. And indeed, there are many advantages to running an application in SDI, and we'd like to consider just 3 of them. The first benefit of running an application in SDI is that it's much easier to interact with the desktop. For example, you could take a picture field and drag and drop to the desktop, or do the reverse and import a file from the desktop. You see, drag and drop is so much easier when you don't have that background window. With a little bit of coding, you could even export a single record in a public format that can be imported in an external application. See, so interact with the desktop, that's the first benefit of running an application in SDI. The second benefit of running an application in SDI is that it's much easier to work with multiple applications at the same time. Now, in this demo, we are going to use a spreadsheet application alongside our 4D application. Now, this spreadsheet actually is designed to talk to the 4D database using a REST interface. See, as we enter some values, these are actually product numbers in the A column, you see that values have been fetched from the database to populate the other columns. In fact, the REST API is called whenever there's a data change detected on the leftmost A column, like so. Okay. Now, we still have the C column, the third column that's empty, so we're going to fill out the spreadsheet on the right side of the screen. And you can see that the values typed in the column are sent over to the database and stored on the left side of the screen. So we're working on the spreadsheet on the right half of the screen, and we can check the database on the left half of the screen. Now, this kind of interaction operation used to be quite challenging in 4D because the MDI did not leave much space for multiple applications to coexist on the same screen. The user often had no other choice but to hide one application whilst working on the other. And that brings us to the third benefit of running an application in SDI, which is that the app can now take full advantage of connected multiple screens. You see, many users have found that one of the best ways to increase productivity is to connect a second display to their computer, or even a third one. And increasing the size of the desktop makes it so much easier to work with many applications that run many windows. Now, when an application is running in 4D SDI mode, any window displayed by 4D can be moved to any location on the virtual desktop. The extra monitors could be connected to the left or right or above or below the main screen, and the window can go anywhere on the virtual desktop. And that's going to be a huge boost to productivity. Okay, so to recap, yes, you can now run your 4D application in SDI mode. And there are many benefits. First, it's much easier to interact with the desktop. It's much easier to work with multiple applications on the same screen. It's much easier to work with multiple applications on multiple screens. Now, if you like this presentation, please check out our breakout session, which will be held in this room right after lunch. Now, I want to move on to the next topic, which is simplification. Now, one way to keep the interface clean and simple is to define help tips. Now, help tips are displayed whenever a mouse pointer is positioned on a certain part of window. And they reveal a piece of information that is hidden or abbreviated on the screen. Help tips remain visible for a maximum of 5 seconds on Windows or 10 seconds on Mac. And in 4D, that duration is set to 12 seconds on both platforms. But what if the user feels that the duration is too long or perhaps too short? What if some users find tips to be somewhat excessive or even disruptive? And what about list boxes? The text displayed as help tips within the context of a list box is always the same. It's the same text regardless of which part of the list box object is being specified by the user. But would it be more practical if the tip was specific to the column or the row that's being pointed to by the user? So please watch the following demo. Now here we have a list box displaying the weather forecast for several cities. Now, as the mouse pointer slowly moves across the rows, you'll see that help tips are displayed, and the content of that help tip is actually dynamically changing to correspond to the weather symbol displayed inside each cell. Now, you might think that each of these cells have their own help tip defined, but actually that is not the case. When you go inside the object method of this list box, you will see that the form event on mouse move is being used. And the command object set help tip is being called to set the help tip for this list box on the fly. You'll also notice that the command list box get cell position is being used, which is a command that would normally return the position of the cell that was selected or clicked by the user. But here it's being used with a new syntax, which will take the mouse X, mouse Y coordinates as its parameters, and then return the column and row number of the cell specified by those coordinates. By combining these features, it is now possible to have a contextualized help tip for each column or each row or even each cell if necessary. So that's a cool new feature. Now, you might notice that the display duration is much shorter than the default 12 seconds. And that's thanks to a new database parameter called tips duration, which allows you to define the exact display duration or the maximum display duration for the help tips feature. For instance, you might want to define a longer duration if, for example, an object is defined to display a very detailed explanation as its help tip. And that's not all. There's another new database parameter added, which is a tips enabled, which allows you to enable or disable this feature globally. Now, when you switch off the help tips feature, they are never displayed in anywhere within the application. See? And there's actually a third database parameter, which is tips delay, which allows you to define for how long the mouse needs to stay still before tips are displayed. Setting it to 0, for example, means that tips are displayed as soon as the mouse stops moving. There you are. And by contrast, setting it to, let's say, 60, that's 60 ticks, means that there's a 1 second delay before tips are displayed. Okay, so to recap, you have fine control over the help tips feature. You can set the display duration thanks to a new database parameter. You could also define the delay before the tips are displayed. And for list boxes, you have fine control. You can even define a tip at the cell level. So that's a new feature, better control over help tips. Now, I want to spend a few more minutes to focus, actually, on list boxes. You see, every new version since V11 has added a new practical feature related to the list box object, and our latest R releases are no exceptions. As we just saw in the previous section, you can now define help tips for each cell if necessary. And for every single object property for a list box object, there are now ways to access them by code. There are getters and setters for every single object property of a list box, which is a huge deal. And then there is also another new feature, actually, which allows you to customize how selected lines are highlighted. Now, on this final point, please watch the following demo. Oh, okay, let's vote over this slide. Anyway. So there's a demo. So you see, here we have a list box which has alternate background colors. So each line's a dark color, light color, and so on. And you also notice that the cell or the columns on each side, on the left and right side, have dynamic or data-driven background colors, which helps the user really to focus on the data, whether it's a negative value, a positive value, and so on. Now, it's a very good-looking list box. The problem is that as soon as the user starts selecting some lines by clicking on them, for instance, they're all painted blue because blue is the system's highlight color. Now, the system's highlight color can be problematic sometimes because, for instance, when the window is inactive, it's hard to read it because a light font color on a light gray background is not very friendly. So to solve this problem, a new object property has been added called hide selection highlight. That's right, hide selection highlight. Now, when you hide the selection highlight, what happens is that the user can still select lines by clicking on them or using the keyboard, but their appearances do not change automatically. As developer, you will be in charge of highlighting those selected lines. If the data source of a list box is an array, then you would update the font color array or the background color array. If the data source is a table, then you would use the font color expression or the background color expression. Either way, you have total control. For example, instead of applying a solid background color, you might want to increase the saturation level. This way, you can still keep your data-driven coloring scheme and also respect the active or inactive state of the window. There you are. You can switch back to system highlight at any time. System highlight, or you can activate your custom highlighting at any time because, like I said, this is an object property, and because this is a list box, you will always have getters and setters. So, to recap. Yeah, you can fully customize how selected lines are highlighted in a list box. And this being an object property, you have full access by code. Now, all these features I've briefly covered, like running an application in SDI mode, or fine control over help tips, or customizing how selected lines are highlighted. These are all features that are designed to help you add that extra polish to the user interface. So I hope you like them and use them to deliver nice user experience. So that's all from me. And next, Thomas will talk about data protection and security.
Yeah. Yesterday, they gave me the most interesting presentation, order. And to compensate, today I have the most boring one. Security. I mean, every customer is asking always about security. Is your application secure? What can I do? And nobody seems to care. Just remember, just remember last summer. There was 3 major hits in just 3 months. There was more money trashed than we will all make together in our lifetime. And it was the big players, it's not the small companies. Telefonica in Spain, National Health System in UK, FedEx here in US, Renault in France, Nissan in Japan, German Railroad in Germany, gas stations in China, Ministry of Internal Affairs in Russia. And all that only by WannaCry, just one case. And why? We missed to keep their software up to date. And Equifax, the US company here, we lost $3 billion, $3 billion, just because somebody missed to update a server? They don't care. And soon after that, a German customer sent me this screenshot, and this really produced mixed emotion. An uptime of 683 days. So one side of me said, wow, for the server, 2 years, nobody touched it. Great. And the other thing, this is a Windows server. 2 years, no update, no security patch, nothing, no restart, just running. So we need to teach our customers that the time of never touch running system is over. And some of you don't want to hear that, but Windows 10 or Windows Server 2016 are really great products to make that possible. Instead of waiting for the administrator to confirm updates manually, to download them, to install them, to approve them, they simply install it and reboot themselves overnight. And even if the computer is off, the computer is automatically started, update, installed, and shut down again. Fully automatic. And honestly, security only works if it's automatic, because we don't have time for that things. So if your customers care for security, teach them not to use Windows 7 or Windows Server 2008 anymore. Go to 10 or 2016 and enjoy the automatic update feature. And the same is true for 4D. We introduced automatic update some years ago. You can auto-update the server, and as you prefer, fully automatic or with admin confirmation, and the server restarts itself, and then deploy the new versions to all the clients. It only works if it's automatic. And reminder, the world became more complex years ago, and the LAMP stack is a good example. Using LAMP means you have Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP, and all the subsystems. And you need continuously to upgrade all of them, including the subsystems like OpenSSL, zlib, and so on. It is so easy to miss a step. It is so easy to forget to do something, and then, okay, something is missing. And 4D is technically not so different. So here's an overview of the most known libraries used by 4D. And all of them need to be kept up to date. So the trick here is 4D is different. We have an integrated system where everything is installed in a single folder. And you need to tell your customer that your business application is different. By keeping the server up to date, all the libraries are up to date. And as soon as the server is up to date, it automatically updates the clients as well, and the client is safe. There's nothing more to do. Just use the auto-update. But that's not all. So we continue in every release to improve the security of 4D. So here's an overview of what we did in the last R releases, and what you all get in 17, of course. TLS, some people don't even know that. In the past, you talked about SSL. but SSL1 is unsecure long ago, SSL2 is unsecure, SSL3 is unsecure, so we renamed it to TLS. TLS10 is unsecure, TLS11 is theoretically not so secure anymore. So starting with 17, 4D rechecks every connection which is not at least 1, 2. So we push to the most secure one and rejecting the oldest. We force PFS. PFS means perfect forward secrecy. As soon as you have an encrypted connection, we automatically enable PFS as well. While it was possible before to use HTTPS, which means in short, don't allow unencrypted connections anymore, force encrypted ones. It's a little bit more complicated, but to keep it short, we make it automatically by design now. And finally, we got requests from customers to support SHA-2 hash codes. So when we checked why, we was told, yeah, for password. No, this is the wrong way. It's not safe enough. So we gave you now a SHA-2 hash code algorithm, but we also gave you a bcrypt command. Bcrypt is designed to be extremely slow. And as you know, cracking means to crack as many passwords as possible per second. And by making the algorithm extremely slow, it is more time-consuming to crack. And bcrypt is an open standard, and you have now a single command in 4D simply to use it. And the result of all that is, if you run 4D server out of a box, enable the web server, install a certificate, you get automatically an A+ ranking from websites like SSL Labs, by design. So your customer might want to reread that and get it in written. As said so often the last 2 days, we have a blog. And on the blog, you find a long document which you will keep up to date with a security guide where we describe all the stuff needing to do. In fact, it is keeping the software up to date, but customers want to have more details. So just download the guide and give it to your customers. I could be finished now, but security is not only a story. It is not only by providing hackers to destroy your data. To be realistic, much more data is destroyed because a hard disk fails or because an end user is doing something wrong. So yes, I'm talking now about the only thing which is more boring than security, backup. Backup. It's again, nobody cares. Except the data is lost, when everybody screams. So this was a marketing error. We should not ever have talked about backup, as nobody cares. So talk about restoring, about emergency disaster recovery. And maybe when somebody would listen. You need to explain to your customer that repairing is the wrong thing. If you repair something, and I see that often in lists, people say, I repaired my data and I didn't lost something. This is the wrong way. This is not trustful. You need to restore. You need to be sure that you get everything to the last second. And 4D is using a transactional journal. And this transactional journal is the big story you need to bring to your customer. For every business transaction we are doing with your application, for every customer modification, for every a new invoice, for every payment, everything is logged in the journal. And because everything is logged, nothing can be missed. As soon as we have an issue, we restore it, we restore the journal, and everything is fully restored. This is a huge feature. It's extremely valuable. So don't miss to tell to your customer that your application is safe simply because you have a transaction journal. And if your customer has administrator believing in virtual machines and says, I'm doing snapshots. Okay, so V17 is also now supporting VSS snapshots. But don't forget, a snapshot is a picture. It's not a transaction journal. And with a snapshot, we will always lose something, the last minutes or the last hours. With a transaction journal, you lose nothing. So that's the story. Built-in data security. Talk to your customers about it. Thanks for your attention, and again, Ed.
I'm back again. So I want to talk to you about some important things, productivity, right? Now, Yesterday, we actually saw for the first time the introduction of order by Laurent. And some of the examples he gave in terms of how to use the data acquired from order in the form. He bound the data to the form directly. Now, today I want to take a different look and a different approach on how I view this feature. So I'm going to jump ahead and go directly to a demo. So what I have here is a method on the left that will display the form on the right. The concept is quite simple. This dialog will accept the user input, which is the date range, start date, and end date. If the input is valid, that is, the start date is less than or equal to end date, then I'm going to display an alert. Let's go ahead and execute. Okay, so here I have the dialog displaying on the screen, very simple. Now, I'm going to do some small minor changes to show you that it's actually working. So from December 1st, well, the end date from December 1st to June 1st. I click Save, Accept, and then I have the alert. Okay, this is just to show you that the functionality is there, the validation is there. Now, normally when we build something like this, and as you can see, we will use some type of a process variable, right? In this case, I'm using 2 process variables to build this dialog. And it's quite natural because it's, that's sort of how it, we used to build this type of things. So I'm going to make some changes to the code a little bit. From the top, I'm going to delete the first 3 lines, replacing the process variables to use object. I'm going to define my new object with the same information that I'm going to use, which is start date and end date. Now, the representation of it is going to come in later. Now that I have the object variable, I'm going to copy it and insert it to the dialog command. Now, this is different from before. This time, I'm entering the variable into the second parameter of the dialog command. This is actually representing the data of the form. I'm going to do the same thing, replacing all of my instances of my process variable with the equivalent. Basically, I'm putting the object variable in front of each variable and put the dot notation of it, basically representing the property within the object variable. Okay? Now, on the form side, I have to make some minor changes. The first thing I'm going to do is go to my object. In the expression area, instead of specifying start date, I'm going to put form.startDate. I'm doing the same thing for the second variable as well. Now, form is actually a function that returns the reference to the form data that I have bound to this form through the dialog command. Okay? This time, I'm just going to go ahead and go back to my method and run it. Now, you can see that I'm maintaining the functionality again. Everything looks the same. I have the start date specified to January 1st, and then end date to December 1st. I'm going to make some changes to the data just to show you that it maintained its functionality. So the start date to June 1st now, the end date will set to December 31st. Click OK, and there you go. I get the alert to come up. So this is sort of another way that you could look at how to bind your data to a form and also eliminate the use of process variables. Because when we build something like this, usually the functionality is quite isolated from everything else. And the use of the variables is pretty isolated. So instead of building a form and having to predefine process variables, instead we just use local variable, which is in this case object. Bind it to a form, maintain the functionality. Now let's take a look at another example. And this one is, I think, is more interesting. So in this example, I'm going to show you the structure window. So I have one table, okay? My table will collect my context information. Right now I have just some fields, basic information I'm collecting. I want to do now is execute a method that will display my information. So these are some of the predefined, pre-created data in my database, just to show you a few. Now, let's say I want to collect more information, perhaps some information like social media or pictures, right? So if I'm going back to my structure window, normally what we'll do is we'll create a bunch of fields. In this case, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to create one single field called detail, and then set the field type to object. Okay? Just one field only. I'm going to go to my input form. This is from the form editor. Again, normally what we'll do is we'll add a bunch of fields in here to collect information, right? I'm not going to do that today. I'm going to show you my form, which is the project form. Now this form is going to be used as a subform to my input form for my contact table. If you look closely, each of the field or variable object has form dot something, which is whatever I'm trying to collect, right? Even before I'm defining anything, I can just add it in directly to the object. Let's add that subform into the input form, and then make some adjustment to the subform to make it more presentable. Disable some of the options. Perfect. Now, the last thing I have to do is, because this is a subform that's going to represent my field, object field, I have to go to the variable and expression area and just enter my field reference to it. In this case, I'm putting in contact detail. Now, because of the field is object, I have to also set my object type to my subform. All right, very simple. Let's go and run the method again. Okay, so opening up the same window, I'm just going to go ahead and get inside of one of the records. So I'm going to pick this record, and as you can see, I have the information displaying as before at the same time with the new area down below. So I'm just going to go ahead and enter some data. Enter some birthday, Twitter information, website info. Now, if the field's there, if you don't want to enter anything, and that's okay too. In this case, I want to add a picture as well. I'm going to choose one of the pictures from my picture library and just drop it in there. I can now save this information, okay? And just to show you that the information gets saved properly and to the right record, I'm just going to go back in and then navigate back and forth. And you can see that the information actually sticks to the right record very easily, very efficient. Okay, so your development process is important to us. And we know that minimizing some of the process and simplify some of these process, making your application runs better and your process runs smoother. So again, with the development feature like this, I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to adapt it in your project very soon, whether it's going to be your future project or existing project. Okay? and I hope you like it. The next thing I'm going to do now is I'm really happy to invite Laurent Hainaut on stage to talk to you about a very cool feature.
Thank you. I had a dream, and fortunately, I could record it, so I can share it with you. So in my dream, I'm the developer of a great library management system. So, okay, actually, this is a demo application you may already know. It is a list box, a nice UI, and we may look at the code inside. Switch to design mode. It has several methods to manage the book order, obviously, the booking of books. So imagine that you could export any method, any form, even your structure catalog as individual text files. Each form has its own folder. In its own folder, the form is exported in JSON format with its own form method. The project methods are grouped in one single folder. Each project method is an individual text file. So now I can close my database, my binary database, and open my just converted database as a 4D project. The behavior is exactly the same. The form has been converted in JSON, the 4D code has been converted in text file, but the behavior stays exactly the same. So now, in my dream, I want to hire a new developer to help me on this project. But to cooperate, coordinate our work, I need a version control system. This is GitHub Desktop, a nice and free desktop application. So I can create a local repository with my 4D project. I enter some description and create my repository locally. Then I decide to put it on GitHub so that my new developer can work on this project also. So I enter the description. I decide to make it public. I choose the organization. I click Publish. And in one click, all my project files are pushed on GitHub. Here, you can see all the individual files of my 4D project pushed on GitHub. So my new developer can work on this project. 1 week later, I want to see his modifications. So I decide to pull his modification and integrate his modification on my own project. So here I can see his modifications. He did some modification on some 4D methods. He did a modification on the 4D form and even the structure file. So let's see what are the actual modifications. So I didn't have to quit 4D, just have to restart the application and see the differences. You can see that the title is red. I don't know why it is red. And the buttons are not working anymore. What did he do? I could spend time at debugging its code, but there is a simpler way. Back to my version control system, I will look at his modification precisely. So here, what is nice is that in red, I can see the previous version. In green, I see the new version. So it did try to remove an interprocess variable. That's a good thing. But here, there is a to-do, so it didn't finish his work. That's certainly the source of the problem. Here, he did a modification on a JSON form, 4D form, the main 4D form. because it is in JSON format, it's easy to find, to see the actual modification. So you saw the new stroke red color that explains why the title was red. And here, this is the structure definition of the database. So here, it is in XML, still a text format, so it's easy to see the modification. And here, he renamed the field from acquisition date to purchase date. OK, but I don't like his modifications. So I decide to revert all his modification as a whole by one click. Don't have to quit 4D. Just have to restart it. And the title is black again. And the buttons are working again. That's fixed. OK, waking up. Was this a dream? Actually, not really. Because the project, as you can see here, is available on GitHub. You can check by yourself at this URL. And this demo was performed with an experimental version of 4D. So we are working actively on source control support for 4D. It will be delivered incrementally in V17 R releases for complete support in V18. Thank you.